What if you unknowingly turned away one of the greatest athletes in history? That's exactly what happened on a quiet afternoon at a small diner outside Clearwater, Florida, when a young waitress working her usual shift made a snap judgment. She saw a man in casual clothes, plain t-shirt, worn-in cap sitting alone, and assumed he was just another customer with nothing special to offer. She didn't know it was Tom Brady. She didn't see the man who lifted 6 Lombardi trophies in New England, who redefined longevity in professional sports, who brought a once-forgotten Tampa Bay franchise back to life. She just saw someone who looked average. When he politely asked for a seat, she told him they were about to close, and that service was limited, despite the open tables and other customers finishing their meals. But what happened next didn't go the way you might expect. Tom didn't pull out credentials. He didn't flash his name. Instead, in just a few quiet seconds, he revealed something much more powerful. And it left the entire staff, especially that waitress, completely stunned. This story isn't just about mistaken identity. It's about humility, how we judge others, and what true greatness looks like when no one's watching. We'll take you from a small Florida diner all the way back to Brady's earliest days in San Mateo, through his underdog years at Michigan, his dynasty in New England, and the fresh start in Tampa Bay. You'll see how the values he's carried, respect, resilience, and grace, shaped not just his career but moments like this one, where he had every right to act like a star, and chose not to. Stay with us until the end, because what you're about to hear might just change the way you see Tom Brady forever. The Florida sun was high, casting long shadows across the sidewalk outside a modest diner just off US Route 19 in Clearwater. The place was a local favorite. No frills, good coffee, and friendly service. It was the kind of spot retirees, truck drivers, and regulars came to for conversation as much as for lunch. Tom Brady, dressed in a gray tee, baseball cap, and sunglasses, pulled into the parking lot alone. No cameras, no team car. He'd been in town visiting family friends and decided to stop somewhere quiet for a bite before heading back to Tampa. Inside, Mia, a 24-year-old waitress finishing up a long shift, barely looked up when the bell above the door jingled. She'd been on her feet for hours. Tips had been light. She was thinking about rent, about her car payment, and whether she'd make it to her evening class on time. When Tom walked in and gently asked, "Hi, mind if I grab a seat?" she responded almost automatically, "We're about to close. Kitchen's backed up. Might be better to come back another time." There were empty tables. A couple was still sipping coffee in the back booth. But Mia had already decided. He didn't look like a big tipper, just another guy passing through. Tom didn't argue. He simply smiled and nodded. "No problem," he said, turning back toward the door. That's when the cook, Joe, a lifelong Bucks fan who'd stepped out from the kitchen to restock condiments, froze mid-step. "Wait, was that?" he asked, peering out the window as Tom walked back to his car. Mia, confused, shrugged. "Some guy wanted a table." Joe's eyes went wide. "Mia, that's Tom Brady." She blinked. "The quarterback?" Joe stared at her, dead serious. "The GOAT." Suddenly, the moment shifted. The man she'd just turned away wasn't a stranger anymore. He was the Tom Brady, 7-time Super Bowl champion, the guy who turned around her hometown team. And she'd told him to leave. But it wasn't just that. It was how he'd reacted. With grace, no attitude, no hint of who he was. And what happened next would stay with her forever. Joe, the cook, couldn't believe what he'd just witnessed. For over 20 years, he had watched Tom Brady on TV, watched him break hearts, especially when he was with New England, and then mend them when he brought glory to Tampa Bay. To Joe, Tom wasn't just a quarterback. He was a symbol of resilience, of defying the odds, of never giving up. So when he saw Tom walk out of the diner without fuss, without even revealing who he was, Joe felt a mix of admiration and embarrassment. He turned to Mia. "You don't get it," he said, wiping his hands on his apron. "That guy could have bought this entire block, and you treated him like he didn't even deserve a coffee." Mia flushed. "I didn't recognize him." Joe wasn't angry, just stunned. "He didn't make it about that. You saw how he acted? That's who he is. Joe knew the stories. The time Brady took a pay cut so his team could sign better players. The way he texted teammates at 11 p.m. before games just to say, "We've got this." The quiet visits to children's hospitals. The handwritten notes he sent to practice squad guys after they got cut. No cameras, no press. Just Tom being Tom. He didn't just lead on the field, he led with heart. Mia was quiet now, the weight of the moment settling in. She had judged a man by the way he dressed, the way he carried himself. And in doing so, she'd nearly missed the chance to serve one of the greatest athletes and greatest humans of her generation. But Joe wasn't done. "You know what separates him?" he asked. "He remembers what it's like to be invisible. That's why he never makes anyone else feel that way." Those words stuck. Because in that brief interaction, Tom Brady had shown exactly what kind of man he was. Not with a speech, not with a name drop, but by walking away with dignity, with kindness. And now Mia understood something. Greatness doesn't always need to be recognized to leave an impact. Sometimes it just walks through your door and leaves you changed. Tom Brady never needed to be the loudest person in the room. In fact, most of his life he wasn't. At Michigan, he walked past bigger names every day. In New England, he stepped into a franchise where success had been elusive for decades. In Tampa Bay, he arrived as the oldest starter in the league, with critics calling him washed up. And every single time, he let his game and his character do the talking. But behind that quiet strength was a lesson he learned early. People may not see your worth right away. That doesn't mean it's not there. Tom carried that belief with him into every locker room, every team huddle, every press conference. When teammates got injured, he checked in. When rookies were nervous, he mentored them. When the nation faced hardship, he donated, quietly, generously, without fanfare. And it was never about image. It was about intention. That's why being mistaken for a nobody at a diner didn't shake him. He didn't need to announce who he was because he never measured his value by recognition, not in the draft, not in the media, and not at a lunch counter. To Tom, greatness was about how you treat people who have nothing to give you, how you respond when no one's watching, and how you carry your values in everyday life, not just on game day. That's the part so many miss. Because in a world obsessed with status and appearances, Tom Brady has always stood out by not needing them. He's the living proof that you can be the best and still stay grounded. And in that diner, with a polite smile and no hard feelings, he proved it again. Mia couldn't stop thinking about what happened. She stood behind the counter, still holding her notepad, watching the empty doorway where Tom Brady had just been. Her stomach twisted, not because she'd turned away a celebrity, but because she'd misjudged someone based on nothing more than their appearance. "I feel awful," she said softly to Joe. He nodded. "We all do it sometimes." But not everyone gets the chance to realize it. Later that night, after her shift ended, Mia sat in her car and pulled up Tom Brady's name on her phone. She watched videos of his post-game speeches, his emotional goodbyes to teammates, his quiet moments with his kids. She read about the charities he supports, the stories of fans he visited in hospitals, the moments where he chose humility over ego. And she realized something that stuck with her. He never needed to be noticed to make a difference. The next morning, she returned to work early. Before her shift started, she wrote a letter. Not long or dramatic, just a note saying thank you. She apologized for how she'd treated him, explained that she'd learned a powerful lesson from a brief encounter, and left it with Joe in case Tom ever came back. She didn't expect anything, but she wanted to do the right thing. 2 weeks later, the diner received a small envelope addressed simply to Mia Clearwater. Inside was a card with a handwritten message. No hard feelings at all. "We've all been underestimated. What matters is how we grow from it. Keep going. Tom." Mia held the note in her hands for a long time. No social media post, no public shout-out, just a private gesture from someone who understood exactly what it felt like to be overlooked and who chose kindness anyway. That simple act changed something in her. From that day forward, she greeted every customer differently, She looked people in the eye. She took time to listen. Because you never really know who's sitting in front of you, or what they've overcome to get there. In the years since Tom Brady first took the field, thousands of athletes have come and gone. Many had stronger arms, faster legs, better stats at the combine. But very few had what truly set Tom apart, the mindset. It wasn't just about winning, it was about how he won. He studied longer, trained harder, treated every teammate, from Pro Bowlers to practice squad rookies, with respect. He shook hands after losses. He praised others even in victory. And most importantly, he never forgot where he came from. Tom often spoke about being the 199th pick. Not with bitterness, but with clarity. That number stayed with him, not as a chip on his shoulder, but as a compass. A reminder to always show up like he still had something to prove, even when he had nothing left to earn. And that humility extended far beyond football. He never chased celebrity. He never leaned on fame to get special treatment. That's why he didn't correct Mia. That's why he walked away from that diner without making her feel small. Because he understood that character isn't about what you can do. It's about what you choose to do. In that moment, Tom Brady chose grace. He chose to let the moment pass without ego. He gave someone the chance to reflect, to grow, to learn, without ever needing to make it about himself. And that, more than any touchdown pass, is why people admire him. Because the world has plenty of stars. But it has very few leaders who live their values even when no one's looking. Tom Brady is one of them. Tom Brady never returned to the diner. Not because he held a grudge, but because he didn't need to. The lesson had already been delivered, not with a lecture or a spotlight, but through a quiet moment that spoke volumes. For Mia, that 2-minute encounter did more than just correct a mistake. It shifted something in her. She began to carry herself differently. Not because she met someone famous, but because she came face to face with someone who lived by principle. Someone who didn't need to be seen to do good. Someone who reminded her that kindness, respect, and humility never go out of style. Other customers came and went. Life moved on. But every so often she'd glance at the door, wondering if he'd walk through it again. And every time she served someone new, she remembered, you never know who's sitting across from you. And more importantly, you never know who you might become because of them. Tom Brady has worn many jerseys, lifted countless trophies, and made history more times than most athletes can dream of. But the moments that define him, truly define him, don't always happen in front of 70,000 screaming fans. Sometimes they happen in silence, in humility, in grace. What happened in that small diner in Clearwater wasn't just a misunderstanding. It was a mirror, a reminder of how quickly we judge and how rarely we stop to look deeper. Tom Brady could have made a scene. He could have shamed someone for not knowing who he was. But he didn't. Because the values that shaped him, from San Mateo to Ann Arbor, from Foxborough to Tampa, were never about being seen. They were about being solid, being kind, being better. He walked out of that diner with dignity, leaving behind not just a missed meal, but a powerful lesson. A lesson Mia carries with her to this day, and one we all can too. Because true greatness doesn't demand recognition. It leaves an impression without saying a word. What do you think was Tom Brady's most defining moment? Tell us in the comments. And if this story touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who believes character still matters. In our next video, we'll explore another incredible story that proves how resilience can change everything.